Welcome to another episode of the Career Keynotes podcast with Tincup and Gardiner, where William and Andrew chop it up with respected Silicon Valley talent acquisition and HR leaders to get the real story behind their career journeys, along with an insider's view of how companies engage with candidates. Let's face it, these days, finding the job, much less nailing down an interview, is not easy. This is a rare opportunity to learn firsthand what companies are looking for in a candidate and the best ways to engage with them. And now, here are William and Andrew.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back. I should probably wait for the applause to die down. That's crowd noise for those of you keeping score at home. Okay, no, but on a more serious note, really, welcome back to the show. Super grateful that you're here. Very excited about today's guest. I've known Garrett for not long enough, and very impressed with his a little bit of a different slant, and I'll let Garrett tell us that. So it's not me telling you how much I admire and respect Garrett. We'll let Garrett speak for himself. You guys know producer Bev. Hi, producer Bev. And William isn't here. I guess I said it in the last episode, so it's too late. William's father, very unceremonious, and just sadly passed away pretty suddenly. So our thoughts and prayers are with William. He will be back soon, but we needed to play through because, as you know, the purpose of the show is to introduce you to people like Garrett who have a lot of domain expertise in the way companies engage with candidates. And I'm super excited about today's episode because he's going to give you a different perspective that will be incredibly helpful. And I'll let you decide for yourself. So without further ado, I would like to welcome you, Garrett Deese, to the show. Welcome to the show, Garrett.
Thanks, Andrew. And thank you, producer Bev, for joining as well. First off, my thoughts and my prayers go out to William and his family. That's it's always hard, and so we're all sending our best. So, so first off, you always make me blush whenever you speak, Andrew. In fact, I'm glad I have the Zoom touch up because my face is probably a couple shades redder than it typically is. But it is an honor to be on your show. I've been watching and I have subscribed, and hopefully everyone watching will subscribe as well. Some great content. So hopefully I can have some stuff to offer, and do have some stories to tell. So I guess I'll start off just kind of currently I'm working at Dropbox. I am in the IT sector, specifically focused on the people, systems and tools. So in essence, I am looking at people teams and helping unlock their potential and introducing the tools and systems that help them do their job. Everything from data analysis and candidate pipelines to doing people analysis, internal FP&A, doing workforce planning, the whole gamut. Not to mention doing some strategic projects around program and project management, all within the focus of the people teams portfolio. So there at Dropbox, it's a cool place to work. We like to say we're all have the Dropboxy sort of attitude, and it is just a great place to work, and it is a great place to see talent unfold and watch people grow their careers. I have a very unconventional path that brought me to Dropbox into my current role. And I think today, if that's what we're kind of talking about, and I can share a little bit about things that I learned along the way, things I wish I would have known, as well as things that kind of unfolded and is sort of like aha moments, because I did have several of those. So like any good story, I guess we should start at the beginning. But I won't start.
It was a cold and windy day.
It was a cold and windy night in LA, in LA, with your hospital. I was bored now.
Go.
I'll start. Following high school, I didn't, like many people, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. Also, I was told that I would, if I wanted to go and get a college degree, that it was going to be my responsibility. So I had a couple of opportunities to grow, I like to say. In terms of, I had to A, figure out what I wanted to be when I grow up, B, what the next step towards that growth would be. So I dabbled in community college, tried to figuring, if I wanted to, reduce costs, figure out what I want to be, and then jump into a 4-year degree, because getting a college degree, I saw value in that. Well, I started dabbling. I did about 3 semesters at 3 different colleges, moving around California, and I realized that I still didn't know what I wanted to be. In fact, I realized that I wanted to travel and that I needed to grow as a human being. So I did the next best thing. I walked into a mall, I think it was Arden Fair Mall in Sacramento, and I walked into every service branch of the military to figure out which one I wanted to be a part of. I did a little bit of research, but honestly, I kind of just walked right in and started asking questions. Went into the Army office, wasn't quite for me. Went in the Marines, definitely wasn't for me. God bless us guys, we need them, just wasn't for me. Navy, I kind of was starting to gain interest, but then I walked into the Air Force office and I was like, this sounds like something I could do. I ended up as a 2W1, which is putting bombs on planes, is the role that I signed up for. I signed up for it as an enlisted because I realized I wanted to jump on this boat as soon as possible, or on this plane as soon as possible. So I did 7 years in the military, traveling the world. I started off in Minot, North Dakota. They say, why not Minot? Well, freezing's the reason. I think I saw negative 54 degrees while I was there. Learned a lot about cold weather gear, and also on how to keep yourself preoccupied when you can't go outside. So, which actually helped out a lot in our current scenario. So, I guess little nuggets that you get along the way. So I ended up going to several different bases. I'm going to sort of speed up this part. Basically, I went to Minot, went to Guam, a year in Korea, 2 years in Italy, and then 1 year in Missouri, where I then decided to end my Air Force career and do something new. Like 60% of all people who leave the transition out of the military, I decided to do a 180-degree pivot, and I was working on flight line, working with teams doing bombs on planes. And I decided, hey, why not go get a marketing degree? So I was like, all right. So I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go to school. And my friend at the time, now my wife, convinced me to move to San Francisco and to start up a program at San Francisco State University. So I went there, left the military, and I leveraged the GI Bill to find a place to live and to start my college career right after, pretty much 2 months after I left the military. So it was basically the safety net that I established was in my last 6 months of the military, is paving the way so that I could immediately jump into my degree program, had all the boxes checked so that I could start getting that BAH payment, which would allow me to live, and then start school, which would allow me to learn. And the last piece was applying that in order to find that job. But that was the biggest thing, was being able to have that safety net and letting the military actually pay for my degree. So here we are. I'm right at the age of 27, decided it was time for me to get my degree. I went through, got my marketing degree, worked 3 jobs while I was in school. And I learned a lot about time management. Big thing was, how do I get paid, but also get credits, and also leverage that experience across multiple degrees, so that in essence, I can make money as well as apply what I'm doing towards credits and courses. And I learned how to kill multiple birds with singular stones, because I didn't have time not to, because I was, if you think about it, I served 7 years in the military. I was 7 years behind my peers in terms of their timelines in their professional careers. So I had to accelerate. And that was my first real lesson about how do you accelerate your career and take advantage of where you have singular things that you're working on. How can you actually combine them so that you can apply what you're doing to multiple facets or work streams? So with that, I got my degree in storytelling, I like to say. And I went from working on weapons of mass destruction to becoming, like I like to say, a weapon of mass creation. It was a nice sort of movement into that realm. And then I started thinking about, okay, what am I going to do with what I had learned? So at this point, this is where the network part came in. Thinking about, all right, how do I find organizations with people like me? How can I find mentors who have roles and jobs that I want to be in? And I ended up joining an organization called Vets in Tech, where I actually was working 20 to 30 hours a week as an intern. Doing that, I got a role at the student center as a marketing manager. I ran a team of 10 different visual designers doing all the ads and everything for the student center, as well as I did some work on the side for a startup doing some marketing plans and stuff, all for free because I realized the experience was more valuable than the money. And so I did that because my BAH, the military, was paying for me to live. So at this point, I went to a Vets in Tech event. I met this guy, Chris Galley. I think you know him, Bev and Andrew. In fact, I think he's been on this show. Chris was just an amazing voice for veterans in Silicon Valley. He also has a humongous heart for those who are transitioning, as well as those who are trying to find their way. He was just a guide for me. He had helped me see all the possibilities that are out there, specifically for a veteran who wants to break into technology. And through Vets in Tech and through him, I was able to build my network, build out excellence around how do you actually talk about your service and transition your experience from the military into potential in the civilian sector. I then followed him and I actually picked up a contracting job at Intuit where I found the world of talent acquisition. So at the time he was a VP of talent acquisition at Intuit, and I came on and I actually helped build out the social and data-driven approach to talent acquisition for Intuit and establish the social employment brand. And it was not just social, but it was also email marketing. It was really that marketing aspect of employment branding. And I really got into the weeds about, okay, this is great, but how do you really understand where candidates are coming from? I started speaking the lingo, talking about candidate pipeline. How do you do multi-source attribution? How do you tell that full end-to-end candidate story? And then I started to realize that, when you think about the world of talent acquisition, it's the same exact world as marketing. In fact, when I started into it, about 6 months in, they actually hired one of their product marketing managers to come and lead the employment brand. And Jennifer Cottle, she was an amazing leader, and she brought this experience and this insights to let's just treat this like a product. Let's treat our candidates like our customers, and also look at secondary and tertiary customers like your recruiters, your hiring managers. So I went through that entire experience. And so I learned a lot just about marketing, but also about employment branding and the technology behind how do you actually establish an employment brand. And then I actually jumped into another company as a full-time employee at auction.com, where I continued to work with Chris Galley. And then following that, auction.com did a spinoff, which was 10X. And I actually helped, I got into the project management space. For there, I was doing more people operations, the technology behind people operations. And I actually segued into, okay, well, how do we actually, develop this brand, and how do we actually develop a company, which 10X was this newly defined company? How do we actually spin up the employment brand around this company? How do you actually start to tell the story of that? And in essence, how do you actually launch a brand? So I was actually put on a special project where I was the lead project manager in order to get that off the ground. I worked with our VP of design, and we took it all the way to South by Southwest and did a huge brand launch at South by Southwest, bought a bunch of ad space, really cool experience, but it lit my fire around, okay, I love employment brand. I love the idea of building this machine, this branding and employment machine and talent acquisition machine. But I love the idea of building, tying that to a company. So went through that, got that great experience. And then I started to see the different ways of work. And I caught on to this agile thinking, this agile work. And I actually was introduced to a technical program manager who was very senior in the space. Fun guy. He actually was a producer for Blue Oyster Cult. He actually produced all their music. He was a rad dude. Yeah, he is actually a master. He's a brewmaster, and he's also surfs every day. He's just a totally super chill dude. Still a great friend and great mentor. He introduced me to the world of technical program management, and over a couple beers, several different nights, talking through this, I realized that I really love the technology. So I decided to pursue a technical program management. Got my certification, Scrum certification, as well as my PMP. And I developed a relationship with our CTO at the time, and he actually pulled me into his group. And I actually was managing 4 front-end engineering teams, 2 back-end engineering teams, and an entire data science team, which I actually had 2 bosses. I had a CTO and our CD, our chief data officer. And I basically helped build out the master data model for the back-end system, so that in order to derive and do we had actually had AI intelligence that was helping find different buyers and sellers for commercial real estate. Really cool stuff. But I just was managing these teams, helping them manage their Scrum cycles and whatnot. And so I got really deep in the weeds in that. So I kind of got away from talent management and talent acquisition into the engineering side of the house. And then I had this opportunity where I could actually combine both of those roles. This role opened up at Dropbox, where the PMO was specific for ITS, which is kind of like the business of running the business of Dropbox. They had this role, which they were looking for somebody who understood the systems and the complex systems that ran talent acquisition, but who could actually spin up a Scrum team and in essence run an experiment to run agile Scrum teams to help maintain the business of HR or the people teams. So it's this really cool amalgamation of both agile and Scrum management and technology management and talent acquisition people portfolio. And I'm like, oh, sign me up. This sounds like the dream job. So I went into the interview, and I'll come up to this, some of that part. I just want to tell the story, and I can go back and get some nuggets. But along the way, that my interview actually turned into a working session where we actually ended up solutioning a couple of their problems. So my interview was actually day 1 working on the job, and then of course they had given the offer if they wanted to actually get additional work out of that. So it just was one of those things. It was just a natural fit. And every day since, I've been hitting the ground every day running. We've been running my team, the people team at Dropbox is known for, it's called HRITS. It's HR Information Technology Services. My team is known for the team for beta testing any new processes, any new systems, programs. And some of the stuff we've done has actually been rolled out Dropbox wide. So really proud of that. So that's my journey, and that's where I got to where I am now. A couple fun facts along the way. I told you I had moved to San Francisco and had that first roommate. I don't know if if you've seen the show Top Chef. I don't know if you've seen Top Chef All Stars that was on last season. I don't know if you saw the winner, Chef Melissa King. She was actually my roommate, and I lived with her for 2.5 years. And while I was living with Mel, I actually had the opportunity to go on The Price is Right. Ended up winning the Price is Right, and came back. I was like, she was telling me she's thinking about applying to be on Top Chef. I'm like, if I can do that, you got to do this. And so I bought her this book, and it was a Top Chef cookbook of all the Top Chef contestants. And I said, hey, I want you to be in this book someday. So I gave it to her as a Christmas gift. And to this day, she still texts me, even now that she's won the show. She won Top Chef All Stars. She says that book was really what spurred me to get into the showbiz. So that was kind of a fun fact there. So that's it. So there's Garrett in a nutshell. I mean, I know that I got to take a sip of water. That was a long one. I haven't done that for I don't know how long.
Garrett, wow, I ran out of Post-its. Note to producer Bev, to executive producer Chris, to drop, if it's okay with you, Chris, the link to the Price is Right episode that you won. Audience, if it's just worth it, just trust me. And for that was a lot, and I resisted the temptation to unmute because it flowed so naturally and easily, and logically, and to the untrained eye, one would think, wow, gosh, he really, that sounded easy. Excuse me, but it wasn't easy. And I think there's so many takeaways, and I'll just start chipping away. But my point is if it's okay with you, Garrett, I'd love to drop the link to that into the comment section so people could see, because I'm a huge fan. Audience, I got a man crush on Garrett. I'll just cop to it, but you can see why. And some of the immediate takeaways, and producer Bev, I'd love for you to weigh in, is that one of the things that I really admire and respect you and want to acknowledge you for, Garrett, is your intent, your desire, ability, willingness to keep showing up and to not glamorize it. I mean, we went from high school to community college to a shopping mall to 4 different branches of the military to the Air Force. We went everywhere. And some of the key things that I wrote down was, and I think it's important, audience, for you to see, experience is more important than money. What a great, that is, somebody timestamp that. We'll have an editor do that, but you weren't like, where's the dough? Your vision quest was, what do I want to be? And by the way, you are not grown up. I'm the audience. I know he looks like Jack Black. He's better looking Jack Black, but he's really 24 years old. No, he's older than that. But you packed a lot into there. And if we unpack it, the one constant, or the one, constant, was your willingness to show up. Your curiosity, your natural curiosity and willingness to show up was rewarded, amply rewarded. You didn't have to do anything but show up and just keep picking up the breadcrumbs, or whatever metaphor you want to use. And then look at you now. And I think, again, part of your thing is your modesty, and that's great. But the truth is you were rewarded by investing your time, your energy, your passion into what interested you, what you were curious about. And, you just did the next best right thing. That, it's kind of an allusion to AA, but that's like, hey, when you don't know what to do, just do the next best right thing. And then once you're done doing that, then the next thing will show up. But kudos to you for eating your own dog food, leveraging the military, figuring out, when you didn't know. And I always tell the audience, Garrett, and you told it way better than I did. You just exampled it. You just validated it. It's okay to not know, but figure it out. And anything's better than nothing. Just show up and go do it. And then you'll learn. And if learning means figuring out what you don't want to do, then that's great too. But if you just show up, stuff will happen, magical stuff. And your journey is not insignificant. I told you this several times. One of the really cool things about you, Garrett, is that confluence of veteran, student, the IT technology stuff, the TA stuff, like this best of breed compilation of skill sets that is incredibly valuable and incredibly rare, and makes a huge impact everywhere you go. So good for you. So I got a bunch of questions, but before I dive in, I'm wondering if producer Beth, by the way, Guam, Korea, Italy, San Francisco State, I mean, that's very cool. I mean, you covered a lot of ground, and you're still very early on in your career. And just now, I mean, Lord knows, I can't wait to follow the next decade of your journey and exploits, because it's going to be powerful. But producer Bev, do you want to say something?
Well, I just had a question. You went into a branch of the military, a fairly young man, and that's a unique experience in and of itself. What is a thread from military training that is something that you've been able to carry with you into all other applications that you do?
Great question. This is something actually I speak to veterans all the time about. I think in the military, They are very much, they have you operate in a box, but within that box, anything can happen. And so what it is the idea of respect for process and tools, but also willingness to adapt and respond. And it's that adaptation, but also knowing when to play by the rules and also when not to play by the rules, because the book is about protecting you and your team, but more important, your team. It's all about, having each other's backs and understanding when to deviate from what we call tech data, and when not to, because at the end of the day, it is about having each other's backs and protecting those who you care about and you love, which is your team, your country, your family. It's just making sure that it's being able to navigate, but also have respect for processes and tools that are in place. And that's something that I think I've carried with me through every role. We all have seen that person who comes into a team and says, I know how to do things, and they come and they start moving and breaking stuff without actually asking questions of why it was there, not respecting why process was brought in. So this has really taught me, like, yes, am I going to break stuff? Probably, but I'm going to break it, not by myself, but typically with the team, because as the team, we've actually gone through, and while we respect what was done, there might be a better way.
That's
Wow.
excellent. Everyone needs that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't say it, but I read somewhere, and I want to be very clear. Everything I know, I learned from someone else, but it's the OODA loop, Garrett. Orient, observe, decide, act. I think the military does a really good job of that, and you clearly did that. The other thing you said, which I think is very powerful, is you got to break a few eggs if you want to make an omelet. That's what producer Bev always says, and I think that's very, very profound. And if I forget again who said it. Could have been Jordan Peterson. It could have been producer Bev. For all I know, it was you, Garrett. But this business of we don't want to. No one wants to make a mistake. And if you're not doing if you're not making mistakes, you're not doing anything. And everybody, no one wants to make waves, but you got to rock the boat, and you can't rock the boat without waves. I mean, there's so many great metaphors, but the ability to navigate within the confines of that really important prescriptive box that you described in the military. Okay, it's not the Andrew Gardiner show. Listen, I have a question for you. We all know, and maybe audience you don't, but one of the tenets of the show is we're very passionate about helping anybody get a job or a career, and help them, whether it's getting them an interview, getting them a better job, coaching them up, giving them insight, perspective, feedback, guidance. And veterans just happens to be a very nascent discipline where I think there's a huge gap and opportunity to improve that. I know you're passionate about Garrett, producer Bev, of the show. We all are, and rightly so. But so here's my question. So just audience, that's just kind of a context for my question. So Garrett, knowing everything you know and everything that you went through, what are some of the key takeaways that you think transfer to the career search, be it veteran or non-veteran, that are and listen, I want to focus on the journey. Your journey was kind of like, not necessity is the mother of invention, but you're exactly where you're supposed to be doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. It's a great anecdotal validation of, again, showing up and doing the next best right thing. But taking a step back and like a more like at a higher level, what are some actionable, kind of practical, pragmatic, either lessons or takeaways or observations that you learned by going through that process that jump out at you, that would serve anyone that's struggling with what should I do, or I don't know what to do, or how should I figure out what I should do and find my calling, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a big one, because I think there's a lot to unpack there, but I think the first thing that comes to mind is, first off, who you are doesn't necessarily have to be tied to what you do. So you could be, we like to call ourselves knuckle dragging mouth breathers, working on Flightline. Just because you're working on Flightline on jets doesn't mean that you can't, in your off time, go and pursue an environmental science degree. Do something that's interesting to you. And just because you're pursuing an environmental science degree doesn't mean that you have to continue down that route. If you find that it isn't interest to you, just know that at the end of the day, you have the choice. Like, I think a lot of people get stuck, and I got stuck when I was in Korea. I got stuck because I felt like I had to be crawling on top of jets, putting bombs on planes, for the rest of my life. And some really helpful people, some really helpful mentors sort of helped me change in fact, my wife was one of the biggest ones, changing my perspective of like, yes, you're doing that now, but that doesn't mean that you have to be doing that down the line. And even though you have a contract and you have to fulfill another 3 years of your contract, because when I was in Korea, I had another 3 years to go, doesn't mean that you can't start to take steps in a direction that isn't what you're doing right now. And that was really key, because what that allowed me to do is it allowed me to break outside the box of my head. And it allowed me to where I felt stuck because I was doing the same thing every day. It allowed me to say, keep doing what I was doing, but it allowed me to start to explore. And that exploration actually allowed me to plan. And that planning has allowed me to execute on the plan and actually take a pivot with my entire life and entire career. And I think that was it. It all started in my head, because the rest of it, you have to get over yourself before you can take that next step in order to really pursue, or to change. And that was a big one. I think the second thing I would have to say is around that plan is understanding that in the military, you're paying with your time, your energy, and many times, sometimes it can be your health too. You're paying for your BAH, for your degree, for your GI Bill, for all that stuff. So you have to understand that there's a transaction going on there. So when you're actually serving your country, it is service, and you came in order to serve your country, but you're also, in essence, in a job, and you are transacting that time, and you do get pay, whatnot, but think of that as your total comp. If you're thinking about a talent acquisition world, your GI Bill, your BAH, being able to take college courses while you're in the service for free. This is all part of your total comp package. And if you don't think of it that way, then you might not take advantage of it that way. So think of the military as another job where there's a transaction. You're paying with your time, your energy, and your input. But from that, you're getting your salary. But there's also more to that. There's your total comp. So I think those were the two things that, like, change in that mindset helped me take the next step to change my career projection.
Excellent answer. I'm just going to keep going. And I know, like, time is short. We can't go on and on. And we're going to have you back on the show, because you're just a font of information and wisdom and practical, like, anecdotal validation for a lot of people that are in your shoes or about to be in your shoes or want to be in your shoes. So taking a step back again, any don'ts, like, wow, I mean, if you had to do, I'm looking at you going, wow, the guy touched every base. He didn't miss anything. Everything he touches turns to gold. I know that wasn't by design, but I also know that it was a natural outcome of what you did. Anything that you kind of wish, boy, maybe I could have done this or hadn't done that, or anything jump out to you that way?
Well, I like to try to live my life without regrets. So at the end of the day, even the things that I wish I didn't do, had I not done them, I wouldn't be where I'm at. So I think that, in essence, the biggest thing is don't live with regret. If you make a mistake, or if you end up doing something that makes you feel like you're off course, just know that may be the one thing to put you on course. So it's not necessarily getting wrapped up in, the here and the now, because the here and the now, if you maintain your projection or trajectory, you may not actually get where you want. It may be that mistake that actually drove you in the right direction. One of the things that specifically when it comes to, because obviously you have a lot of viewers who are probably looking for roles, probably feeling a little anxiety about interviewing and whatnot. I think the biggest thing, and this isn't so much, I guess it's don't walk into an interview unprepared. I think that's just, everyone knows that. But also don't look at interviews in the way that you're basically that you're trying to fulfill a job. You want just to fill out a job. What I would recommend is think about every position. Reason why a company opens up a position is just because they're trying to solve a problem. So if I'm applying to a job, in essence, what I'm saying is I'm actually a solution to your problem. And so you've heard of Simon Sinek's The 5 Whys, right? I would always challenge any candidate, anyone who is about to apply for a role, is to apply those 5 whys to that role. Start off with the problem statement. X company is hiring a X role, and start off with, well, why? And once you get to that why, you go deeper. Well, why? And so maybe it's like, because they're trying to ramp up and they need to hire 10, let's just say recruiters, 10 new recruiters, and be like, okay, well, why? And then be like, well, because they have a new product that they're bringing to market. Well, why? Because the companies take it. Like, the thing is, the idea, and then what you can do is you can walk into an interview, and sometimes the questions they'll ask you, and you want to have good questions to ask your recruiting team after interviewing team. Start to dive into those whys with them and ask, and like anywhere you're not quite sure where that why is, ask that question, and then take the journey, and then start asking them those whys. And sometimes, and it happens rarely, and it actually happened in my interview with Dropbox, where they'll be like, well, I didn't really think about why. And then all of a sudden you're going through those lines with them. And all of a sudden you're actually solutioning. You're like, okay, well, this is actually what the problem statement is for this role. And then here, let's actually look at why my experience is actually going to be a great fit for that. And all of a sudden you're actually learning together, and you're all naturally going to be a fit for that role because you're actually really understanding why that role exists. And then you can actually pitch yourself as the solution for that role. And you can actually turn yourself into the solution for that role by going on that journey with your interview team. It's just a great way, I think, to interview, because in essence, it flips it from a typical interview of like, I'm interviewing for a job, I have my interview team, to, well, no, we're working on this, working on a problem together, we're trying to come to a solution, which ultimately you want them to know the solution is to hire you.
Wow. I mean, so a couple of key takeaways, because you just touched on some really valuable, worthwhile stuff. I think there's a mindset, to your point. Like, if I'm going into an interview and I'm nervous, I don't want to make a mistake. So I kind of want to go, I don't want to mess it up. So I want to stay in the guardrails. And I don't know if you've ever read Christopher Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. He's a retired FBI negotiator. And his whole thing is never say why, never ask why, because it puts people on the defensive. And I agree with that. Like, why are you wearing that shirt, Andrew? Well, but the way you framed it is it turns the interview into a different, and what came up for me when you were saying that is, what we fail to do in interviewing situations and just in general is, I'm so in my head about, like, does he like me? Is it cool? Am I smart enough? Is it right? I'm not even thinking about what you're thinking about. I'm thinking about what you're thinking about, what I'm thinking about, or even worse. And then it really, so my point is when you're the way you describe it, it's like, hey, this person's probably interviewed 50 people. So I'm 51. So I'm going to change it up a little bit. I want to collaborate. I want to demonstrate my curiosity and my interest and make sure they've done their homework, and not in a, hey, why do we know, but like, well, why, what's this job for? Like, what did, why did you create this rec? And what's the role here? What's the purpose? What's the overarching theme? What do we accomplish? That makes it in from an I to a we, and all of a sudden you're on the same team, and then you're still in an interviewing environment. And I think we get stuck in this, oh God, I just want to make sure he likes me, and the font's right on the LinkedIn profile or whatever. But what a great what a great, again, anecdotal example of how, and I think that's largely part of why you've been so successful. I would also add, just along the lines of, hey, how do you, actually, let me not just extol on my wisdom because I don't have that much of it. So Garrett, we're coming up on time here. Do you have any idea? You've done a lot of work around how companies engage with candidates, and it's one thing to have the interview. Any advice or feedback about how to get I mean, you know a lot about the way companies select who's going to even get their references checked. By the way, don't ask, we've discovered this on the last episode, never ask when are the drug tests and how long does marijuana stay in your system.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a no-no.
Yeah. Okay. So, but any advice for me if I'm sitting here just shotgunning my resume out to Rex on the internet and being very underwhelmed with the response? Any suggestions or few tips on how can I get a better acceptance ratio on just getting an interview with someone?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, look, there'll be people out there who say, put these keywords in your resume, format it this way. Look, it is important to know your story. It's important that you can tell your story verbally and that you have a resume that can tell it on paper. Like, you got to get the basics down, right? You need to be able to be concise in your story. I love the idea of the elevator pitch. If you're in an elevator with a hiring manager and you have a minute and a half, how do you tell them who you are, what you do, what you can offer them? And can you do that concisely in a minute and a half to 2 minutes? And I like to say even less than that. Like, if you can get it down to 6 sentences, right? Worked with Forbes and with Carmine Gallo, and actually a few years back helped him write an article on the art of the pitch. And it was specifically about how, like honing your pitch or whatnot, which I'll send it to you, Andrew. It was a really fun article to write with him. But I think, look, what it comes down to is this: you got to have your bases set, but that's not enough. What you need to do is be interested and be interesting. Get out there, start talking to people. Go to events where people who have your role are there, and start talking to them and learn from them. And right now, if you can't go to an event, get on LinkedIn, put in your keywords, find something that in common with somebody. Like for me, one of the big things when I was in college was I would send out invites on LinkedIn. And if you're a veteran out there, you do get 1 year of the LinkedIn Premier or LinkedIn Pro. Use those, send out a note, look in LinkedIn, find people who you have something in common with. Maybe you went to the same schools, put in your college and whatever career you're looking to get into. Maybe just put in your college and start to fill out who's out there. For me, I would actually look for people who were prior military and who were in careers that might be of interest to me. And then I would just basically say, hey, you are in a career track that I am really interested in. I know you get 1 million, of these a day, but I would love to sit down and pick your brain, and my whole line was, I'll buy you, let's have coffee, my treat. Of course, here's this college kid offering them to, coffee. Typically they work in offices where they get all the free coffee they want. But I actually had several coffee chats, and in that coffee chat, it was just be interested and be interesting. I never asked for a job. I basically literally was there to learn their story. And I was doing exactly what you did, Andrew. It's like, hey, I'm here as a sponge. Just tell me how you got to where you were. And at the end, I'd be like, thanks. I'd love to connect with you, stay connected with you on LinkedIn. And without fail, typically if it wasn't right after, then later they'd be like, hey, shoot me your resume. I'll, get you in the system and whatnot. But I was genuinely interested in the people, not necessarily in the job, because you may talk to somebody. Like, I had coffee with a VP over at Adobe using this technique, and I'm using my network, and I was able to basically sit down, have conversation, never ask for a job. And then it was, basically later said, hey, shoot me your resume. I'll give it out to our recruiters and see what we have here. I ended up not working there. However, she said, hey, here's a couple other people if you want to talk to them. And I ended up talking to them, going down the route. And it was just, you will find it will pay dividends to not don't follow the money, follow the people, follow the interest. And I think that was would be one of the biggest things is, have your T's and your I's dotted. You gotta look good. You gotta know your story. You gotta make sure you have that set, but don't just rely on that. Actually go out and do the work to get to know people.
And just to, again, pile on, what I loved about what you said is, number one, go the extra mile. People want to help. They genuinely want to help. So make it easy for them to help. Reach out. Go that extra mile. It will pay off. And that's already the title of the episode. Be interesting and interested. And people do want to talk about themselves and explain to you. And then have, offer them something. And sometimes it's in the giving that we receive. I'm still having a hard time getting you to receive stuff. You're terrible at receiving. Okay, listen, we are at that, and we could go on and on, clearly, and I want to be respectful of your time, and we'll have to do another episode. Producer Bev, I'm going to hit him with my last question. Is there something you want to ask or say before we let Garrett go?
I did have another question, but you kind of touched on it. I mean, when you were on Price is Right, you didn't just stand there and scream and cross your fingers. You were very strategic. You played it a certain way. You presented yourself a certain way, so that you were very successful. I'm always interested in looking at down the food chain a little bit in the application process, because my whole background is retail, and that's a different world. And the pool of people you're talking to is a completely different pool. So you were strategic at Price is Right. You knew what you wanted to go about. Retail and all that stuff used to be a pad of paper. Here's an application. But now, shockingly to that whole pool, it's computerized. I'm just trying to think of the smartest way to not game the system, but the smartest way to address that new application process and think maybe things to make sure you absolutely don't do.
So are you from the perspective of a hiring manager hiring somebody, or from a candidate applying?
Oh gosh, probably for the purpose of the show, the candidate.
Okay, so I think the biggest thing is just, if you're looking at a computer program, then that means that you're looking at an applicant tracking system. Applicant tracking systems have things like keywords. What they do is they allow recruiters to be nimble. And what that means is recruiters can be quick. And that allows a recruiter to look at multiple resumes very, very quickly and to scan them. So when you see a computerized system, think 15 seconds. And you're buying in 15-second intervals. So scan your resume and say, I've got 15 seconds. What story am I telling? Have I earned myself another 15 seconds? So that is what you want to do, is you want to be able to come through, and that's why you don't want this really 2-page long resume. 1 page, that's all you get, 1 page. Because why? 15 seconds, if you have 2 pages, a recruiter's going to say, this is too much, I can't take this, I'm going to move on to the next candidate, right? Even in retail, if you have, you're going to have a large influx. So you get 1 page, 15 seconds, tell them enough of a story to earn another 15 seconds. Another story to earn another 15 seconds. And then typically after that is when we get the call. Is because it's basically, think about it, is you have a limited amount of time, and you're taking this recruiter on a journey, and through the applicant tracking system, know that they're going to be adding keywords. They're going to be certain things. They're trained to be able to look at your resume and to differentiate you from other resumes. And you just want to buy that time and just think in 15-second intervals.
And that is genius. Sorry, Producer Bev, not to cut you off, but see, Garrett, what you've really done a good job of is recruiters are busy. So the easier you make it for them to engage with you, the more likely it is. And clearly, it's spoken like a true marketer. Like, make yourself interesting, make yourself attractive, but be brief. Be brief, get in and get out, and give them the impetus to return. Okay, so listen, we're at that part of the show. This is kind of a trick question, but we always want to include some sort of, and I think I just stick your Price is Right win in the description, and that will do it. But if you have any kind of anecdotal HR story or interviewing story that is yours, and we're not trying to embarrass anybody. It doesn't have to be irreverent or inappropriate, but any kind of thing like, wow, I can't believe that happened, or that was awkward, or wow, and we've had people, the parents showed up for the interview instead of the kid or the person because they didn't think the person would show up well, or the parents showed up with, one guy took his teeth out at lunch and set them on the table. We've had a lot of good stuff. So anything come to mind that you're like, wow, that was awkward?
Trying to think, because not necessarily. I pride myself on any of I live in mutual, like I live in this weird world. I love weird. So that Dr. Seuss thing, I'm weird, you're weird, we're in mutual weirdness, we call it love, that whole thing. That's my everyday. I love weird. I live in weird. So when I find somebody who's doing something a little strange, typically I do the why thing, is why are they, and try to like relax them and whatnot. But I haven't come across anything that was just completely outrageous. And from my perspective, that again, I'm kind of weird. So it takes a lot to like throw me off.
You're so authentic, Garrett. And so you're a prince, and I can't thank you enough for being on the show. So Garrett, again, we've only got 20 million subscribers. So I want to, set the expectation right. But how does someone, I'm kidding, we don't have that many subscribers. How does someone who has heard you and wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is definitely the reach out to me via LinkedIn. Also too, if you're watching this video, down in the comments, tag me in there, and I'll comment back.
Beautiful. I can't thank you enough for this, you guys. Thank you so much. And Garrett, I mean it. We're gonna have to have you back on the show because. And by the way, we did do one in Chris, but we haven't dropped it yet. So I'm probably going to drop yours first. No offense, Chris, if you're watching. Just because this is super helpful. The key takeaways for me are, you just showed up and did more than was expected. And you didn't chase the money. You didn't razzle dazzle, no glitter in the envelope. You just, and you were curious and you were open, right? The mind's like a parachute. It only works when it's open. And you also touched on hey, sometimes no is God's ultimate protection. And as I look back over I'm a lot older than both of you and producer Bev. Sometimes the stuff, the failures, the disconnects, the stuff that didn't go, the universe doesn't always give you what you want, but it gives you what you need, and you need to trust the process. But if you don't show up, nothing will happen. And you showed up and you were rewarded. And I was rewarded by having you on the show, and I'm very grateful for your time and your attention. And
thank you, Andrew. It was a pleasure. This is fun. I'd love to come back, and excited to see where this show goes. So let's get that 32 to 2 million or 200 million subscribers. And producer Bev, it's a pleasure as always. And thank you both, and have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.
All right, you guys. Thanks. Audience, like and subscribe. More good content coming your way. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thanks for watching this episode of Career Keynotes. For more killer content, please like and subscribe to our channel. We welcome all comments and questions and are grateful for any input regarding future content, topics, and guests. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.